Welcome back, everyone. Michael here with Offshore Citizen. Malta has recently announced they are going to be completely overhauling their corporate tax system, changing the way it is, which will be coming into effect over the next couple of years. And I figured I would dive in and describe a little bit for you about what they're discussing, how the changes will go, why they're doing it, what this is likely to mean for Malta. So let's dive in. Before we do, if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button, hit the all notification bell. Thank you for your support. If you would like help with paying the lowest legal amount of tax possible, relocating abroad, doing offshore banking, setting up companies around the world, etc., please reach out to us. You can book a call with me at calendly.com/Michael-Rosmer. There's a link in the description below. Or send a message through our websites, offshorecitizen.net and offshorecapitalist.com. Okay. So, Malta. I have spoken in the past about how Malta has this brilliant tax system and talked about how the way that it works is it appears to be high tax with 35%, but they have this imputation system where you can end up getting back 30 of that 35, so you end up at an effective rate of 5%. This has made Malta super popular for people who are, say, moving to Portugal under the NHR because it's a non-blacklisted country. It's one of the few countries that's not blacklisted where you can get a very favorable tax rate. And on top of that, Malta has been the beneficiary of lots of growth. So to give some context of this, since I think it was around 2014, the population of Malta has risen by about 20%. It has basically been going like this, so accelerating growth, the fastest in the EU. So great success for them in that regard. It's come about in terms of the construction, in terms of more restaurants, options, etc. On top of that, their GDP growth has been really impressive. If you were to go back to 2001, GDP per capita in Malta was around $10,000. It was about half that of Italy, which was about $20,000 at the time. And between 2001 and 2018, they grew by a factor of 3, from about $10,000 per year, GDP per capita, to over $30,000 per year, to the point where in 2018 they have actually surpassed Cyprus and basically been more or less neck to neck with Italy. So it really shows the success that they've been having. However, it is worth noting that they're fairly limited in terms of their sources of income. Yeah, they have a bunch of tourism, but they also have a big financial services industry. They obviously have had citizenship by investment, residency by investment, and so these things are factors. But one of the big ones has been their tax system. Now, there's a lot that is not attractive about doing business in Malta. First of all, it is probably the most expensive place in the EU to form a company. It is slow, it's bureaucratic, it's filled with all sorts of compliance that really should have nothing to do with anything, and it generates a lot of fees for the locals. There's lots of hoops to jump through. It's really expensive to maintain these companies, etc. The people there kind of don't necessarily kind of work in your favor and kind of push certain things, a little bit like you see in Cyprus. And so, in a lot of these regards, Malta is, kind of disadvantaged as a place, but their system is so good that it overwhelms for that, right? Meaning it is a smart system in how it's designed, looking very compelling or very not compelling on the surface, but actually when you dig into all the specifics of how they've handled things for the longest time, they were the only ones in the EU who didn't have transfer pricing rules. They didn't have CFC rules for quite a while. Even the way they brought in the CFC rules now, there's some ways to navigate that. They have this non-dom regime, etc. And they are discussing getting rid of this imputation system and going towards what they describe as something that is more in line with what the European Commission and the European Union is doing on the continent. I would say this is probably a bad idea, terrible idea for them actually, because it's a pretty significant advantage. But it does show you a little bit of the cartel-like behavior that is happening within the EU and more broadly globally. And it is literally that, right? It's literally you've got a cartel, a lot of pressure, kind of making it difficult for countries that frankly are disadvantaged geographically. Like, you can understand if you go and look at why it is that UK allowed Jersey, Guernsey, Alderney, Sark, to some extent Gibraltar, definitely Isle of Man, etc., to have favorable tax regimes. And the argument was, look, they don't have much else, right? It's a small island. They don't have the same natural resources. They can't attract the same talent, etc., etc. They need some things. And so they create tax incentives that kind of compensate for businesses being there. Now, granted, it's a little bit different in the world where it's easy to relocate a company to a place with minimal need to relocate other stuff there because we're in a digital age. But that being said, this has been a critical advantage. Now, I've obviously been critical over the last while of just how pathetically bad the Maltese banking is. It's completely impossible, although they did just start their first new digital bank there. So there's some options. There have been some other foreign banks that have been options through digital banking, but it has been fairly difficult in that regard. This here, if what they're saying they're doing is they're going to get rid of this kind of refund system and go to something more normal. They had previously promised they would lower the corporate tax rate from 35% down to 25%. For foreigners, that doesn't really matter. And so then the question is, well, if you destroy these incentives, if you lose the casinos, if you lose the online businesses, if you lose all the companies that have holding companies there, if you lose the guys who are setting up companies in order to, optimize through Portugal, etc., what will that do to the overall economy? We have to realize that this is not a country that has a zero tax policy, right? So they benefit, they get 5% tax revenue this way. They're saying they're doing some analysis, but I suspect it doesn't account for who all will leave. And frankly, it's a really easy place to leave. There's, of all the years that I've seen people move there, it's not a place that people tend to stay in. And so if you take this away, where do people go? There's so much money in the halo of this financial services industry. It'll be interesting to see. So tell me what you guys think in the comments below, but I would say this makes Malta much less compelling to plan for on a go-forward basis. They are saying that this will not get implemented until 2025, so in theory, if you've already got a Maltese structure, you're fine for the next couple of years or something. But imagine if you're setting something up today, we're halfway through 2022 or so. By the time you get set up, maybe you start using it in 2023, you've got like 2 years that you can take advantage of that structure, and then you've got to flip into something else. I don't know if that's that exciting. Anyway, let me know what you think, and we will see you on the next video.